Have you ever experienced something so crippling in your life that has made you feel broken? I have. Are you someone who has a giving heart but is struggling to feel good themselves? Are you consistently putting your needs aside to take care of everyone else? If so, you're not alone. Giving starts with giving to yourself so that you are able to give of yourself to other people. Isn't it time you took back control and discovered what makes you tick? Join me in my journey and find out how you can feel better about yourself, live your best life, and share that with others. Thinking of yourself, it doesn't make you selfish, it makes you brave. I'm Nelia, and this is the Giving Starts With You podcast. Welcome to the Giving Starts With You podcast, powered by Travel, Live, Give, and I'm your host, Nelia Hutt. If you're ready to expose and target the areas of your life that are not getting you closer to living your best life, then I have created just the thing to help you. I've created a Live Your Best Life blueprint. It's a free download that you can now get at www.travellivegive.com/blueprint/. This blueprint will look at 7 key areas of your life, from how you manage your mental health to how you show up in your relationships, from self-care to job satisfaction, and how and what you choose to spend your free time on so that you can start living the life you deserve, desire, and crave. Because after all, it's time to start feeling better and create a life that makes you proud. You'll also learn in this blueprint more about yourself. You'll get clear on what really matters. You'll stop making excuses and take action, and be one massive step closer to the life you want to live. Life is way too short not to live your best life. So what are you waiting for? Go to www.travellivegive.com/blueprint. Now let's tune into the episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Giving Starts With You podcast. I'm your host, Nelia Hutt. Thank you so much for joining me every Monday for these wonderful conversations and these inspiring people and friends that I'm meeting online. I am so grateful to have met Jade Simmons today. How are you, Jade?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me.
So are you out in Houston?
I am in Houston, Texas. My family and I, my husband, my high school sweetheart, that's who he is to me, and my 2 kiddos. We're here. We've been here for quite some time. We're originally from Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, that's amazing. So I'm in Toronto, just north of Toronto. I'm in Canada.
Yeah.
And I have met so many people from Texas. I'm going to have to come out and have a get together and just meet everybody in person, honestly.
I'll tell you what, it's its own thing. Texas is kind of its own universe, and people think it's all cowboys and cowboy boots, but I promise you, you will see that. You will definitely see that, but it's a lot more. We love it here. Houston especially is pretty awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of great business people out there. I've been meeting incredible people, work, hard, and it's amazing. But I'm so excited. I want to tell everybody about you. So let's give a warm welcome to Jade Simmons. She's an author, a speaker, and a musician. Jade is the creator of transformational experiences designed to activate audiences into becoming the biggest, boldest version of themselves possible. How can you not fall in love with her already? She is a world-class concert artist and also the CEO of Jade Media Global, which is a revolutionary live experience and global content distribution company specializing in 360-degree personal development and strategic transformation. I can't wait to find out more about this. Jade is nicknamed classical music's #1 Maverick and named one of the best keynote speakers of 2019, 20, and 21. Today, Jade's experiences not only delight concert audiences, but her dazzling, high-impact presentations are fast becoming the go-to fuel for the world's superlative brands and organizations, from financial services to biotech to entertainment, education, energy, and beyond. as the author of this new release, this book that I am dying to talk about today, Purpose, the Remix, I love the title, a mind-blowing re-understanding of purpose and how it works. She believes that too many people have confused purpose with passion and are not fully walking in their gifts and talents. And as Jade says, purpose is not what you do, it's what happens in the people that when you do what you do.
Yeah.
So I love this so much because I know a lot of unhappy people, and I know a lot of people who are not living their truth, who are not living with their gifts. And it's sad because they could be doing so much more. Their life could be happier, more fulfilled. It's just amazing. So
Yeah.
thank you, Jade, for being here and for making time. I know you're a busy gal, so
Yeah,
I
but thank you
appreciate that.
for giving me a space to share this message. Purpose and passion are two of my babies. I love talking about these topics because I do believe the sad fact is that most people live and die, Nelia, without ever uncovering true purpose. And so my mission with this book, we were looking to create a purpose revolution. And so that more than 1 billion people uncover purpose, because that means we're looking at more than 1 billion new solutions that we have not yet been introduced to. So I'm passionate about this topic for
Oh,
sure.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy. And I could tell you're passionate. You know,
Yeah.
you can just tell, and it's because you're living the life you want to live.
Yeah, I mean, I know what it means to live not just purposefully. I mean, let's be clear. I think a lot of people engage in purpose-filled activities. I think many people work on purpose or for a purpose. I think a lot of us work for other people's purpose, and there's no shame or shade in that. But I do believe it's a travesty to not ever discover the unique outbreak effect that is hidden within you, really in plain view. I said there was the sad statistic, but there's also, we can kind of blame Hollywood a little bit for it because, purpose is always owned by the superheroes or the Mahatma Gandhis and the Martin Luther Kings. And we go, well, I'm not saving the world anytime soon. I didn't lead the civil rights movement. I didn't give up all my belongings, to be amongst the people. So do I have purpose? And the answer is yes. And the other answer in advance is purpose doesn't have a size. There's no small, medium, or large purpose. It literally is one size fits all. So whether you consider yourself to be an average person or a superstar, we all have the unique opportunity to operate powerfully in purpose.
Jade, I love that so much. I need to know, is this something you always were passionate about, or what happened in your life to kind of get this to all surface?
Yeah, well, I was passionate about passion. So I'm a multifaceted slash artist. So pianist slash speaker slash fashion plate slash author, the slashes are endless. And since I was a little girl, people were always telling me I needed to pick one thing. You gotta pick one, and I could never do it. And so I was made to believe, well, that means you're unfocused, and the fast forward, the real truth is that the career I have today, the life I have today, is because of all the things. But what I was in love with in the beginning was the feeling that came with each of those things for me. Piano, I had the most passion for as a kid. Nobody had to make me practice. I lived at that instrument, but I was passionate about everything that I did. And anybody familiar with passion knows that sometimes it fizzles out, which is why we move on to the next thing. And when I was at the height of living in my passion as a concert pianist, I was suddenly very tired, very exhausted. A lot of that came from being in hyper competitive mode. As a classical musician, it's an extremely competitive field. And so much of it is based on perfection and execution. And so that music you might love, but you get to a point where you're not really playing for the music. You're playing to be perfect, and you're always wondering what the audience is thinking, and that stuff starts to play with your head. I remember having a bout of stage fright, all things I had not been used to. because I'm in my passion. I should feel good. I'm in my passion. And in order to get through some of those concerts, I started telling stories in between the music. So I give myself a
Ah,
break from the instrument and I start talking to the audience, and then we'd make friends. Then we felt like besties. And I noticed my playing was getting better because I was now forming this relationship with the audience. Long story very short, I started experimenting more with the types of stories I was telling. So instead of just talking about Mozart's childhood, I would maybe have my audience imagine their own childhood or listen for certain things in the music, and they were being inspired beyond the music. That created an incredible trajectory in my career. People started booking me because I was the pianist who talked. Then
oh,
that opened up a speaking career. People started booking me because I was the speaker who played the piano, right? And so over the years, I started developing a very unique, trailblazing brand that was differentiating me in whatever field I was in. And that's when I discovered, wait a minute, it's not that my purpose was to play the piano, because that's what I thought, because I had invested a lot of time, energy, and money into that, multiple degrees into that thing. But my purpose is what was happening in those audiences
mm,
because of the way I played, because of the way I put together a concert. So even though there were thousands of other pianists, no one was doing it exactly like I was, which meant I was also not doing it exactly like anyone else. And that's when I came up with this epiphany or had the epiphany, wait, my purpose is not the thing I'm doing.
true.
It's what's happening in people when I'm doing whatever the thing is that I'm doing. And I always challenge people to start looking for that unique thread, because in any experience, whether I'm writing, preaching, coaching, or performing, people usually will say they had a shift in perspective, and they also feel bigger and bolder from whatever it is I was offering. And so now I know that part, that breakout, that's my purpose.
And they're eating it up. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh, yeah,
yeah,
incredible.
they're eating it up. I love that. To me too, I've always associated purpose with not the thing, but the feeling.
Yeah.
It's the feeling that I get when I'm doing things that I just love. And we were talking before we hit record how sometimes people think, oh, if we make it big as a musician or something happens, it's luck. And it's hard work. Like, I love that you shared with us how hard it is and how it can take over the love of what you're doing sometimes. But it has to be that way. So, to get the skill and to do the work and to gain. And I love that how things evolved came from you finding a way to get
Yeah.
that back.
And
That
that's the
is so
easy part.
cool.
So the hard work part comes with the acquisition of the skill,
Mm.
right? Malcolm Gladwell will tell us 10,000 hours. I'll tell you, it's a little bit more than that, but at least 10,000 hours, right, of piano lessons and performing, because at some point you have to reach a certain level of mastery, I believe, in order to operate in your purpose at the highest level. So
Mm.
the people who really get to enjoy purpose and are rewarded by it also don't settle for wherever they were last year. We're always pushing to figure out if purpose is attached to impact and my level of execution affects the type of impact, then I've got to always be working to make sure I'm at my highest level of execution. But where the fun and the enjoyment comes in is what's not hard is having that effect,
Mm.
right? Practicing the piano, learning the skill may be hard. Learning how to speak, if it's not what you do naturally, may be difficult. Sitting down and writing that book until it's done can be hard. But what's not hard is that thing that I do naturally for others. And it's the same for every single person on earth. When you're looking really hard for purpose, you're probably looking in the wrong place.
Yes, because
You're
it
probably
comes
looking in the wrong place.
naturally.
It really does.
Yes.
I can usually trace purpose back with people that I meet all the way to childhood. I met someone who is a mental health therapist now, and I said, what's your specialty? And he says, well, I meet people in these really rough parts of their life and I support them through it.
Mm.
And I was like, I take those people after you've gotten them through that rough patch. I say, where do you want to go next? Now let's 10x that and we can get there, right? Do not send me those people before they've come to you, right?
I
And
love
his
it.
people are not ready
Mm.
for where I want to go. And if I got his people, they'd be going, wait a minute, I need support first. I need to figure this thing out. And so we each start to find out there's a phase, right? There's a phase in life when they need to run into Nelia. And if I were to look back over your life, we would find, if I were to interview your parents, your
Mhm.
friends, there would be a through thread. They would say, I always speak to her because she listens differently, or she always has a unusual solution that I hadn't thought of. And you'll start to hear these themes when we begin to interview the people that love us and know us. And that is where purpose is usually hiding in plain view.
It's so funny that you say that because for years, before I understood what I understand now, for
Mhm.
years, I'm like, oh, don't have any skills. I don't have a purpose. I don't have. And then I realized all the things I was shying away from is the best part of me, like wearing my heart on my sleeve, caring about people, all of
Mhm.
these genuine characteristics, and sometimes, like you said, if we're looking too hard, we're looking in the wrong place. It's
Almost
so
always.
true. I see that all the time, but people don't always realize that.
Well, think about it.
And
We've
then,
been sort of taught that purpose is
mhm,
what we do. So if we're not doing anything, or if we're not doing the thing we thought we wanted to do, we think we don't have purpose. If you think your purpose is to be a parent, when those kids leave home, you're like, oh my, I just lost my purpose. No, your purpose was in what was breaking out in those kids because you were their parent.
yes,
I believe
thank
our
you.
teens are gifted to us. I believe our children are gifted to us. My hairstylist, who is in the room of 16, more than 16 years now, I think 18 years, she comes with me whenever
She's
I can.
amazing. I gotta say,
Oh,
you look glamorous.
she's so incredible. But I remember we were in her shop once and she was doing my hair. And there's always this moment where she turns you around to the mirror. And
Mm,
I don't care whatever I've been dealing with, right? When she turns me around, we're at the point now where it's like a psychic connection. I don't have to tell her what I want. She'll just say, what city are you going to? Who's in the audience? I got you. And she will come up with the best hair ever.
awesome.
But what I told her is, I said, you're not a stylist, you're a transformation architect. Because when you turn us around, something has transformed, something has lifted. And now we joke, because I can't take her anywhere, Nelia. We go somewhere. She's supposed to be with me. I'll look back. She's over ministering to somebody, on the other side of the room, talking to the other speaker, giving them confidence. And I'm like, see, this is what happens when you understand that your purpose is not just in the clippers, right? That you use to do your job, that it's not just in the salon, but that purpose comes with you. So whoever is listening and watching, know that it's purpose because it goes wherever you go, and you get to switch it up. You can do podcasting or teaching or writing and still have that purpose come with you. So this
Mm.
idea of having to be locked into one thing, purpose unleashes us from that.
So, Jade, would you agree then that even though we have our purpose, we don't necessarily have the tools to get it done? We have
Mm.
the connection and we have all the feeling that goes with it and all the drive, but sometimes it's not something we might be. Um, okay, so how do I say this? So we're naturally gifted in our purpose, even though we may not already know it. But
Okay.
sometimes it's okay to learn the skill that goes along to marry the two together.
Yeah. I think if we're not learning, we're not truly living at the highest level possible. And one of the greatest privileges of this life is that we get to keep learning new things about ourselves, about the world around us, about the people that we love. And I think you're right. There's certain things that will come naturally, right? So piano, music came naturally. I had to work at the piano because I started very late in childhood. So I had to work maybe a little harder in some ways than my friends who started at 3. Um, and then there are things that come naturally and easily. Speaking is easy, writing is easy for me. Leadership was more difficult
Mm,
because I'd always been a maverick, a loner. But there's a point where your purpose is going to be too big for you to carry by yourself, and you're going to have to build a team. And as someone who has avoided group work like the plague since she was in kindergarten,
yes.
I had to learn that. And I mentioned my stylist Dolores again. She watched me learn it. And there were things that she saw on the outside. She used to always say, everybody's not going to make the team, but Coach Jade wanted everybody on the team. I see the best in you. You can do this. And I would see people 10 times bigger than they were. And she would always say, you can't see it like they have to catch it themselves. And so leadership has been a hard
Mm.
one lesson. Now I love it. Now I love the complexity of it. It still frustrates me at time, but that's a prime example of, just because I'm in purpose doesn't mean everything's going to be easy. Now I know, because my purpose is to activate others into becoming the biggest, boldest version of themselves possible. I don't have to guess why my employees are gifted to me. I know that in our time together, they will be bigger and bolder than before they started working with me, right? And so what we're most proud of at Jade Media Global is that when you come in one way, you leave with more skills than you had, usually more confidence than you had. And usually I will demand that you lead, even if you think your job is in the back, because I believe that the people gifted to me are designed to lead in some way.
I love that so much. And I love that you treat your employees that way because they're really family members. You have common goals and you just want everybody to succeed. And the
It is,
fact that they come out transformed, I think that's amazing. Like I
yeah.
honestly do. So
It
Jade, I
makes it
just
so much more fun. It makes it so much more fun.
yes. And it
Yeah.
makes them want to work better and not just work, but collaborate and come up with new
That's
ideas.
it.
Because
That's it.
sometimes you can work for an employee who just stifles you and you're so creative and I don't wouldn't ever see you dealing that way because
Yeah,
it's just
they
yeah.
come to me, Nelia, telling me, because so listen, I've never worked, I shouldn't say never. The majority of my life, I have never worked for anyone else. I had one summer job at the Express. That was the summer before college, and I mostly did it so I could get some jeans on discount, right? And then when I was in college and grad school, they required us to teach other students. But other than that, since middle school, I've been making my own money, playing
Mm,
weddings. So I've never been in that corporate structure. So what's been wild is I see this pattern. A lot of the women, right now the team is an entirely female team. A lot of the women who come to me come from what you just described: stifled environments. They had more creativity than what was allowed. They were shut in by the job description. And so we have these flexible job descriptions that as you grow, we work to build a position that matches your new skill set. And so
that's amazing.
most people don't have to leave, they just shift over or they elevate up. Or you may grow to a point where you realize, I want to be doing my own thing. And we always say, we bless you into that
Mm.
next season. Even when we have to fire, which is not fun, right? Because you don't want to lose people and you have to fight that feeling of feeling like you failed or failed them. To me, it's a blessing, because if you're not able to keep up in one season, it's a lot of grace actually to
Mm.
release you now, then take you into a season that's going to cost you health wise, emotionally, mentally. Now, people don't always feel that way when when the call comes, but for
But
the
when you
most part,
explain it like that, it's so clear.
and
Yeah.
usually anyone we've ever let go was relieved, right? Because
Mm.
they could tell maybe the position outgrew them. And so it's, again, the leadership thing is tricky, but it really is a blessing to be in the capacity to be able to lead someone.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I know you've had the passion and the purpose most of your life.
Mhm.
And even though it has altered and changed, but for those of us who don't know what ours is, because it's in there. It's like people say, "Oh, I don't have a story," but
Yeah.
everybody has a story. Your story may be smaller than somebody else's, maybe, but it's in your mind. It might be, but it's
Yeah.
not.
It's
It's
not in
just as
reality.
important. So for
That's right.
those people who are struggling to find their purpose, how do you know you're in it when you're in it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, shameless plug. You've got to get this book,
Yes,
Purpose Remix, because I
absolutely.
walk people through it, Nelia, because I was saying that purpose statement. I would go on these stages and say, your purpose is not the thing you do. Dramatic music, right? It is the thing that happens in others when you do what you do. Mic drop, and people would, oh, and I'm telling you, the next day we would get emails and DMs. I quit my job after I heard that purpose statement. I started a ministry. I went into missions. I'm going to write a book. I left this relationship. All sorts of stuff. People were jumping because those words were setting something ablaze. And so 8, 9 years later, I said, you know what? I better fill this story out a little bit. So that's why I wrote the book. And there's a chapter in there that talks about,
Okay.
first of all, helps you how you figure out what it is. But then what you just talked about, a lot of people, the lucky ones, will discover purpose, but then they'll never walk in it. So
Mm,
how do you know? You know that you're in purpose because there is that effortlessness that comes from the impact part. So when you get turned on, if you, let's say you discover that your purpose, you used to think you were hypercritical. People used to criticize you and say, oh, she's such a negative Nelly, or she's always seeing the bad stuff. What if we helped you understand that since you were little, you were designed to catch the things that other people missed?
mm,
And that when you were bold enough to point those things out, now maybe we have to work on how you point them out with
right.
grace, with honor, with creativity. But when you begin to point those things out, people are able to implement solutions before the problem happened. Well, that's a mind-blowing redirect of what your
Yes.
purpose is. So you go from a negative, what people might have mislabeled as a negative character trait, to understanding it's a very purposeful purpose. Well,
Mm,
now what happens is it's like this light comes on and you start seeing, it's like when you get a new car and you see that car everywhere. Same thing with purpose. You go, oh my God, my purpose is to make people bigger and bolder. So whenever you see someone who is behaving small, I
mm,
can't help it. I try to pump them up in some way, or flip the mirror is what Dolores does, right? Because it's the same thing that happens in the
yes.
shop. So she's flipping the mirror and saying, no, look at how beautiful you really are. Look at what's really in you. You know, I gave you the hairstyle to bring it out, but this thing was in here already. We just gave you an outside that matched the inside. And so you'll know you're in purpose because you find that you can't turn it off anymore. You
Yes.
have to think hard about doing it. And you also see, there's a favorite scripture of mine says that you'll know them by their fruit. So I judge my concerts and speaking engagements. You know, we say on my website, standing ovation guaranteed, because we know now it's always going to happen. But there are different types of standing ovations. And the one that I want is the one where people are standing because, not just because you were impressive, but because they feel
Mm,
bigger. They feel like they can do anything. It's a different way they stand up, Nelia. There's, from the classical world, they'll stand up and, golf clap, blah, blah, blah. But in this setting I'm talking about, there's this whoosh that happens. And yes, you might have been impressive on stage, but what's more impressive is what's just transpired in them. And that fruit is, when you're gone, people are still talking about the remnant,
yes.
right? Talking about, man, that conversation I had with Nelia 5 years ago, I felt
Mm,
this thing and I still feel it, or I carry it with me. And we run into people like that. And it's such a humbling thing when
mm,
someone says, you said this thing 5 years ago, and I don't remember
yeah.
what room it was or what I said, but they made a life altering change based on something that I said. And that's one of the most humbling, most rewarding things you could ever ask for. It doesn't feel like work at
No,
all.
it's the real stuff, the stuff that's really engraved and that you're born with and that you're given as a gift when you come into this world, that you want to leave a legacy when you leave behind. And those are the most important things. And I love that you call it a redirect, because that's really what it is.
Yeah.
And just in that instant, if someone, when you're helping somebody take that negative, what they think is negative, and turning it into, oh my goodness, this is actually an amazing gift you have
It's a gift.
that not a
Yeah.
lot of people have, so
Mhm.
much happens in that moment. The confidence, the shoulders go back, the peace comes in. It's
That's
just
it.
so many things. And it's, you don't want to have to convince people, but though there are some people that are kind of a little bit held back and not really wanting to discover. And
Sure.
if we could just shout it from the rooftops and say, hey, let it go. And as soon as you can start embracing the things that I'm teaching you, the things that are in your book,
Yeah.
your life is going to change. It's just going to be a 360 degrees.
It's absolutely a full transformation, because what I've noticed is that purpose changes everything. A lot of people think, oh, well, this is for if I want to be a speaker or if I want to be a coach, or it's like, no,
Mm.
no, no. This is if you just want to enjoy waking up in the morning, right? So there are moms who understand, I mean, listen, we'll be open and honest about it. Mom can feel like drudgery,
Mm,
mommying, it
yeah.
doesn't end. But when you understand Oh, these little ones have been gifted to me so
Yes.
I can make them bigger and bolder than they ever were. Not so that I can make them mini me, which my
Mhm.
daughter always tells me, "Mommy, I'm not your mini me," right? So we don't express everything the same way, but
Mhm.
it doesn't change that there's a reason I'm her mom. And I think when we as parents, especially high achieving parents who want to mold their kids
Mhm.
into high achieving kids, guilty as charged, I had to understand that what was high achieving for me may not be the same for my son,
Mhm.
who's also creative, but we look very differently in how we express ourselves. So
The
purpose.
same here.
Oh, purpose. I'll tell you, look, now this is me after having evolved. Those first 5 or 6 years was like, you are gonna, and I had to learn the hard, the hard way. But the thing that purpose does is it can help in your relationships. I
Mhm.
know it took me a while to realize, even though I feel like I'm a world-class coach, I am not called to coach my husband. And he has made that very clear. And I have finally accepted that, right?
Yeah,
Or even with my parents and my kids, there's a different way that we behave towards each other than what I'm doing on stage.
of course.
But there's still purpose in that, and that to me is the beauty of purpose, is that it helps you shift how you need to in all of your relationships and all of your activities.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that you mentioned, it can be lots of different things for different people, like the waking up in the morning, for example. So I know a lot of people who work 9 to 5 who love their jobs, which is great. But
That's
after
right.
a while, each day is like Groundhog Day. And you
Mhm.
get to a point where I do see a lot of people, and I used to be one of them, that have a hard time getting up every day because
Right.
there's nothing new to look forward to.
Right.
Whereas, once you have found that and you've let that in and you've, become curious about your purpose and your passion and you start living through it, it just changes everything.
For better and for worse.
Everything.
So,
Yeah.
so here's the thing with that daily, the 9 to 5. Most of the clients that I coach come out of 9 to 5 worlds. And I used to think, oh, well, you just need to start a new business. And everybody's not called or designed to have their own business or their own company. And when I started really honing in on this definition of purpose, what I came to understand is, wait, you could have been in a 9 to 5 for 10 years, be tired of it, and then uncover true purpose and go back, and that workplace looks different.
Yes.
That break room feels different because you know what you're called to activate or what you're called to unleash. And for those of you who are hearing this and going, wait a minute, you're telling me purpose is tied to other people and that's it. I don't want to be codependent. Or I have people said, I'm recovering codependent. I don't want to go back down that road. No, what I actually said is this, that because purpose has an effect on others, you don't even have to try hard. You get to focus on being 100% yourself.
Yes.
And the default effect is it's going to have an effect on others. The other great thing is when you know what your purpose is, you are freed from people. So when I go on a stage in a corporate setting, I no longer have to ask, should I keep the pink hair or not? Because this is corporate. Because now I remember, wait, my purpose is to make you bigger and bolder. So I get to come in as big and bold and sparkly as
Mhm.
I want, because you need to see something different. So it both attaches you to people in a powerful way, and it also frees you from worrying about what people think. Because there are going to be some spaces you might just be in a space to reach 1 or 2 people, not the entire room. And knowing that you are on purpose, we listen at the end of an engagement for what people say when they come up to me. And if
Mhm.
one person says, you were talking just to me, that was all from me, I go, okay, great. I'm so happy to meet you. I know why I was here. I will sleep like a baby tonight. And so
Yes.
purpose does that. It allows you to be able to move through life focusing on, can I become the fullest version of myself, even at a place that I thought I was over. Now, spoiler alert again, in the book, there's a whole section about what to do when you start getting the itch. So purpose opens your eyes to all this possibility. It also starts to expand you. And you're going to start feeling like, I think my season is over here. And that's okay. It's
Mhm.
okay to begin now to ask what's next. And just because it's a good job or has great benefits doesn't mean that you must be there your entire life. And this is when you take the time to explore what your next steps in purpose get to be.
And just keep moving. Just keep moving. It might be at a different pace and it might be in a different way, around different people. But what's tough is those people who stop. It's okay to pause your life sometimes and give to yourself so that you can continue to give to other people. Nobody wants to be burnt out.
That's right.
And
That's it.
but yeah, I really love this conversation because I think you used some examples that may get our listeners to think in different ways. You were saying how when you're living in your purpose, it's effortless.
Yeah.
And you were also mentioning before that you had a bit of stage fright. Did you find that the less you cared about certain things and weren't really important, and the more you just went with your emotion and your true, the trueness of what you were trying to get out there, that you just forgot about the stage fright?
Yeah, it's actually even much more, I think, scientific than that. Passion, I believe, it is different from purpose. And what I describe passion as, it's the fuel that powers you in your purpose. That's why when you're only following passion, it can just burn out and fizzle. And you're like, well, I used to like quilting and now I don't. What happened? Well, you moved on. But that fuel now, when you know purpose, is what comes to power you back up. And so when that stage fright hit, I was believing my purpose was to impress audiences by playing the piano. So anytime I made a mistake, had a memory slip, I believed I was no longer impressing them. So it created this spiral effect. When I realized my purpose was what was happening in the audience when I played, or when I spoke, or when I offered an interactive experience, my focus then became on what's happening inside of the people in the audience. Not what are they seeing and what are they hearing from me, but what are they feeling? And when that shift happened, the only thing I became obsessed by was, are they getting a good experience? Are they feeling something? Did they learn something new? And the funny thing is, my playing got better. I had less mistakes, less memory, because scientifically what I was doing was this really cool form of projection. When you have stage fright, there's a technique that teaches you to first look at your fingers, then you throw your gaze to the inside of the piano, then you throw it to the chandelier, then you throw your gaze to the back of the audience. And every time your visual projection goes out, your brain goes into autopilot and can do what it's supposed to do. So what I was doing was throwing my focus and attention to the audience themselves. And that was freeing my body up to do what it already knew how to do. So I wasn't having the fright. So there's a lot of science behind just the power of what we're thinking, how we're thinking about it, and what we're believing to be true. In the beginning, I thought subconsciously, I think that my audiences all wanted to see me fail, or, we're coming to watch the train wreck. And then I'd talk to them afterwards and they would say the opposite of what I had been wrongly fantasizing about. So there's a whole other conversation we could be having on the mind and mindset, and being able to reframe and really understand what's reality versus what is emotion and what's in our brains.
Yeah, for sure. When you were mentioning, even if you help the one person, I've talked to people who say that, and then I've talked to people who say one isn't enough. But when I think of that one person, so if you impact even the one person who comes up to you after the show, you are never just impacting the one person, because if that person is a parent, if that person is a teacher, if that person is anybody who speaks to anybody, they will be changed by the transformation, by the impact that you had on them. So they will continue their life slightly altered because of what you did for them. So even though it is one person, it becomes so much more than that, because those people will give out new energy, right? They will give out new.
It's generational impact when you think about it. And I think for anyone who thinks in terms of one isn't enough, listen, I'm, head overachiever in charge. I get it. And my ego wants everybody to stand up for the standing ovation. My eyes spots the two people who did not stand up in the back. Even if the whole room, I'm like, what's wrong with you two back there, right? So I get it. I get that focusing on wanting more, but I think the reframe is not saying one isn't enough, but to say, don't stop at the one.
I
Don't
love it.
stop at the one, right? What comes after, but then also knowing if you're in a room, um, and there's 100 people and only two stand, then
Mm.
you know those two were impacted in a way, like you said, that's going to continue to have an effect. So I think again, it's about focusing in the right direction, not on the numbers. You know, companies that bring me in, I always say, listen, I'm not going to be happy if all we're doing is helping your bottom line. I want your people transformed. Funny thing is, when they're transformed, it helps your bottom line, right? So it works out. It
And there
works
you
out
are explaining the redirect again.
all the time.
I
And
love it.
that's a part of my purpose, is in that reframe. And you know, when you talk about how do you know if you're in purpose, once I started understanding what that effect was, literally looking back, and thinking back through some of the compliments we were getting, the ones that feel great for the ego are, oh my gosh, your playing was incredible, or I love those shoes, or man, your hair was what, you know, people are awesome. That's great. That's one set of compliments. The
Mhm.
compliments I'm trained in on are the ones where the people are telling me what happened to them. So I started taking note, and the compliments we kept hearing the most, or really comments, were, I never thought of it that way. We heard that a lot. And then we also heard, I feel like I can do anything. So
Mm.
those are the things we kept hearing. And then we also kept hearing, this is for a business tip, you're the best keynote speaker we've ever had. We heard that at every engagement. So finally I started saying, why? I would ask the client, why am I the best? They'd let their hair down, Nelia, because you know they'd already paid the fee,
I
and
love
now
that you
they're ready
asked
to.
that question.
Oh, I
Love it.
ask it all the time. And they
Yes.
will tell me about all the other speakers. And I'm just sitting there
Mm.
sipping on my tea as they spill the tea. And they're telling me things like, you know, we hired enter celebrity name here, and we paid him a gazillion dollars, and he didn't even know the name of our company.
Mm.
Or we hired this person, and they said they were going to customize, and they didn't really know our industry. You know, they made
Mm.
sort of one little random customized comment. Well, once we realized we were doing all these things they weren't used to, we began to advertise that this is what we do. We customize deeper than anything you've ever had before. We meet your people right where they are. We see your people. And so, as a musician, study was a part of what I did, practicing hours on end, detail. I didn't know that's not what other speakers
Yeah.
did. So I set Google alerts. I knew what was happening with that company in the news. I would research their pain points. If you're a realtor, I knew what you felt like during COVID. If you were a nurse, I knew what it felt like for you, you know, during the recession. So I would know all these things. And when I'm saying them, back in real time, the other compliment we waited for was, we thought you were one of us. We thought you
Oh, I
were a
love that.
realtor.
That's the
So
best one yet.
that's the best one, because we knew, okay, we did our job. We
Yeah.
recycle that information back in all of our marketing materials. And it, you know, was what really skyrocketed, because we also, it wasn't just marketing. We would come in and do that, but really taking the time to see people.
Mm.
And when you know what purpose is, you know, if I'm here to make them bigger and bolder, where are they feeling small? Where are they lacking confidence? And then you create the experience you offer around knowing what your purpose is and knowing what it is that they need.
I love that you asked for
Powerful.
that feedback.
Oh
But
yeah.
not only did you ask, you listened and created something out of it, because I bet you none of the other people asked. And so they will
We
continue to do the
They
same thing.
continue. Well, and the thing is, they had a high level of success.
Mm.
What I always tell, you know, the team that I work with is, we're not judging our success on what they call success. We have our
Yes.
own rubric. If we stop hearing these comments, we've gotten too big for the moment, right? Because we think, oh, you're having me in because I'm Jade. No, you're having me in because Jade makes you feel a certain way. So if Jade stops giving that feeling, we got to fine tune. Now, my season may change, you know, or the purpose may look differently. When I'm preaching in church, I preach differently than some other preachers, but it's the same thing. I want you to go, I never saw that scripture that way.
Mm.
Or I feel like I can apply that to my life now, right? So that's that thing where purpose begins to be your guide. So even in different settings, you still operate in confidence, even if you don't look like all the other ministers, or you don't look like all the other
Mm.
concert pianists, you're still able to offer what it is you're uniquely called to offer.
It's like you just want people to be seen.
It's huge.
And the way you do that is different in different parts, whether it's the speaking, whether it's like my big thing is to end loneliness. And the way that I do that is many different ways,
Mhm.
you know, so that's in purpose, but the passion part and the, you know, people call hobbies and interests, that is completely different. I love that we're talking about this because it's so true. And the way that you go about it will change, and that's okay. But in
That's
the
okay.
end, the best compliment you can have is for somebody to say, hey, you made me feel seen, you made me feel heard, you made me feel understood. So I think that's beautiful. I love what you're doing. And honestly, it's such important work. Not that it's work, but it's so important. We're all really just humans living together, divided by so many unnecessary things. So many people are feeling voiceless. And I feel like you're giving them a voice, you're making them feel more about themselves in a positive way. And I really respect you for that.
Thank you so much. You know, when you talk about ending loneliness, this is a prime example of how we all have very unique and specific callings on the earth. Loneliness was never a feeling that I felt often. I love to be gone. When I first got married, I had to set reminders to remind me to call back home and tell my husband I'm still alive, right? Because I'm out exploring, I'm having a good time. But I would always hear that there was this epidemic of loneliness that I personally couldn't
Mhm.
relate to. But just last night, I saw on Instagram, oh, one of the saddest things I've ever seen, heart wrenching. But this influencer was being very vulnerable.
Mm.
And she came on and just talked about needing to be touched. She said she was in a touch deficit. And
Oh, wow.
she was like, I just need a hug. And
Yeah.
it was powerful because she was letting us into this loneliness. And the comments of people who said, I know what you mean, I feel that way. And I think since COVID, especially with the fact that we were isolated, but if you're ever curious about whether or not your purpose is necessary,
Mm.
because see, Nelia, you could have been before your time 10 years ago if you were talking about wanting to end loneliness. When everybody was saying, oh, I feel good, I'm good by myself, I'm independent, you would have looked like you were ahead of your time or out of sync.
Mm.
But purpose will always catch up with the moment that it's designed for. So now, when we're in this epidemic of loneliness, this increase of depression, and I always said after COVID, we were going to see a mental health epidemic as well because people were isolated.
Mm.
Um, this is one of those moments where if Nelia were just to Google, she
Mm.
would see how relevant and powerful what she offers is right now today. So those of you who feel like you have an unusual purpose or an unnecessary one or a weird one, I have friends with seemingly weird purposes, yet their offices are filled with people who need their weird purpose. Do not give up. A lot of times, and I say this in the book, sometimes we're ahead of our time. Sometimes we're not prepared yet to offer what it is we're called to offer. And I always say, God's
Mm.
so gracious, He'll give us the time to master the skills, to gain the confidence. And sometimes the world's not ready yet. They haven't hit up with that moment in time where they need you. But none of that is the signal for you to back out, to give up,
Yes.
and say that what I have is not necessary, because I promise you it is.
Yes. And sometimes the how do I put this into words? It's
Perfect.
those of us who are feeling down, who feel like we don't have anything to offer. Those are the ones that need to find their purpose quicker.
Yeah.
They're the ones that have so much to give. They're the heart-centered people who need the opportunity and the confidence to just let it out, you know,
Yeah.
because I think it would really just spill out. And like you said, if you're thinking too much about it, you're in the wrong area, honestly. It
Yeah.
should be natural. And I think if you're open to it, it will be. And the happiness and the fulfillment and the blessings that come from that
Yeah.
are beautiful.
Now, I dare your listeners to ask the vulnerable question. I have a list of these questions, and some of them make people a little nervous. Like to ask someone that loves you, "Why do you love me?"
Mm,
Or "Why do you come to me with your issues?" Right? Women know
yes.
that, right? We're the one who the friends come with all the stuff, and ask them why. Because I have a group of friends, and there's some things they never bring to me because they know what I'm going to say, and they do not want to hear it. But in a certain situation, they always come. because
Mm,
they know what I'm going to say and they know they need to hear it. So ask people, what happens when you walk in the room? What are they expecting
yes.
from you when you arrive? And like you said earlier, you may not have, I call it the big stage story, but I can hear any story and I can make it into a superhero one
Mm.
because that's how I see people. So it can be you operating in that 9 to 5 for the last 10 years. I promise you, we can look through that story and find out how you've been behaving in a very big way. A lot of people ask those questions and they say they are so surprised at
Mm.
some of the answers that come back because the answers sound bigger than they saw themselves.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Yeah, so I dare you all to
Yes.
start asking those questions and be ready to be amazed. Be ready to be a little bit embarrassed because you're going to be like, oh my gosh, all that happens, or you really think that about me? Oh my gosh! And it's a really good feeling to know that whether or not you've been trying, you've been having an impact, no matter what.
Yeah, so asking for the feedback again, because if you don't, it can be a little scary
It
because you
is
don't
scary.
know what to expect. And so sometimes that does stop people from asking. But honestly, you want to know. You want to know the good, the bad, the ugly, because it's important how people perceive you. It's not important for you to decide who you are based on other people's opinions, but it is important for you to be aware and then decide what you want to do with it. You may not agree,
That
you may
information.
agree, but more information is better. And it's okay to have a 9 to 5 if you're looking at it as a positive thing, like you said,
Right.
and you can still be in purpose after, during, before your 9 to 5.
That's
Um,
right.
so I love that you mentioned that as well, because honestly, every single one of us can be living in our purpose.
At all times.
And
At
if
all
you need
times.
help figuring it out, we've got Jade here who's
All
more than
right.
more
Yes,
than
and go to
willing.
purposethemix.com. We have exercises there that help you start digging into it a bit. And again, I list the questions in the book. And we also do a whole section, Nelia, on what purpose is not.
Mm.
And I had some friends who said, I filled out that whole list and turned the page and it said, now none of those things are your purpose, right? So, but it's good to kind of know what we've been mistaking for purpose or settling for as purpose, because you can then put those things in a category. And what you'll learn later is that purpose runs through all of those things, but you're not beholden or owned by, or your identity is not caught up in your role or your title or your profession, because those things will likely change over time. And so to me, the discovery of true purpose, understanding it's what's breaking out in others when you do what you do. There's freedom in that. And whenever you can attach your own purpose to freedom, you know you're onto something.
And Jade, I don't know if you agree, but at the end of the day, it's really about connecting with each other. And I think we all have a responsibility to live our best lives so that we can teach and share our human experiences with each other. I think
You
we
listen.
need to have that.
You just spelled out the whole last chapter of the book. I feel like in so many of these interviews, people are going to think I fed you all the stuff to say in the beginning, but my last chapter really talks about how purpose awaits, and I put some not so gentle pressure on you, because there's at least a point when we have to say, are some of the things that I see in this world that I don't like, is
Mm.
there some way I could be behaving that would, if not altogether alleviate an issue, bring some light into that corner of an issue, or bring some light into my corner of the world? And so, you're going to uncover purpose about midway through the book. And so by the end, I don't want it to be a book you just put back on the shelf, or an Audible you just turn off and say, well, that was nice, I feel good. No, what are
Yes.
you going to do with it? I said in the beginning, if purpose is attached, and I believe it is, to solutions, then when we don't do the work of uncovering our purpose, or when we uncover it and then don't do the work of walking in it, we are robbing
Yes.
other people of solutions. So those of you who need a guilt trip, there it is. Those of you who want the pressure taken off of you, guess what? When you
Uh-huh.
uncover purpose, you get to be you 100% of the time. You're going to feel awesome, and you're still going to have an impact whether you like it or not. So either way, we're set.
Thank you, Jade. This was amazing. What an amazing conversation. It was so enlightening. And I can feel your presence. I can feel all your passion and your purpose and everything that you believe in, you're living. So I love that so much. So everybody get the book.
Yeah.
Okay. Purpose the Remix. And I love that you put remix in there. I'm a previous recording engineer.
So you
And
get it.
so I love that so much. Love it. But yeah, and so okay, your Instagram. Tell us where we can find you. How can we reach
Yes,
out to you?
I live on Instagram out of all the platforms at official Jade Simmons. You can also go to jadesimmons.com and you'll see all the other ways to connect, and also purposetheremix.com, which will help you dig deeper into your own purpose. I look forward to connecting with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jade. I have one more question before we
Yeah.
go today. What would you say is the biggest gift you have ever given to yourself that has
Mm.
changed the way you felt about who you are?
Oh, wow, that's a loaded way to end. The biggest gift. I can't say that I gave it to myself. I would say it is the gift of faith.
Hmm.
Which if it were given to me by a human, probably my mother, who instilled in us the understanding that faith wasn't religion, it was a relationship. And
Oh,
that has spoken into every area of my life. I believe it determined the path that I walked since I was a young girl. And today it is my guide. Having faith, first of all, that there is a God who cares enough to give me individual purpose, cares enough to make me a unique human being with a unique impact. That in and of itself is empowering every day that I get to wake up and believe that. So faith is the easiest answer for me, for sure.
oh, and it's a relationship. You gave me like goosebumps.
Some goosebumps on
And
that one.
I
Yeah,
only
that
usually
that whole thing. Yeah,
I
religion
only
and
get those goosebumps usually through music, and I'm feeling them. I'm feeling them.
good. Good, good, good. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation, isn't it? That
Yes.
concept to me, and I think it's one that could change the world all on its own.
Mm,
This idea that it's about our relationship with God Himself versus our differences with each other on
I
Earth.
love
So,
that.
yeah.
So, yes, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today and for listening to the beautiful soul here, Jade Simmons. And honestly, just be kind to yourself. At the end of the day, if we don't take care of ourselves, which includes living in purpose, we really won't be able to help anybody. And we all need to be there for each other, honestly. And so I thank you so much for this time today that we shared together. And I really I love what you're doing. I know I've said that, I can't say it enough. And it's really important. And I can't wait. I want to come to one of your shows. I cannot wait. And I will definitely buy the book. And I'll put all the links in the show notes for everyone.
I thank you so much again for sharing your platform. And I actually may be in Canada before the year is out. So we will keep you
Oh,
posted. We'd love to have
yes.
you as a guest.
Yes. Oh, please. Thank you so much. I would love to. I would love to. Thank you, Jade. Keep rocking.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe or leave a review. See you next week on the Giving Starts With You podcast.